everyone. Welcome back to another continuing education check-in. Today, we're bringing out some big guns. We're talking about what to do about religious differences. So there's a lot to break down there. And then our end segment, one of our viewers has asked us for style tips for the winter. So I'm going to give some recommendations for the guys, and then Sania will give some recommendations for the girls, and we'll make sure that you guys are all ready for the winter and cuffing season. And so as we're thinking about religious differences, let's start off by ranking or rating. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important do we think religion is for us when we're thinking about dating?
Like, how important is it to me, or how important is it for me, for my partner, to have the same religion?
Oh, for your partner.
For my partner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you ready?
No, I'm thinking. I was like,
you're
okay.
looking at me.
I was like, let me think. Okay. I think I'm kind of ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah? Okay. 3, 2, 1. I'd say 6 to 8. I'm like in that range.
Okay,
Fine,
so
7.
You're 7, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm at 8.
Okay, so we're very similar.
Yeah. Maybe 8.5.
Okay.
Why don't you start us off? Why are you at a 7?
I think I'm at a 7 because I think for the longest time I believed that it didn't matter if the other person is the same religion. Like, I would put it at a pretty low rating because I still do believe that religion is like for an individual by themselves. Like, I think religion is a very personal thing. But I talked to a friend recently, and we were just like talking about this topic, funny enough, and we discovered that maybe things get complicated when you have a family, and your parents want one thing and their parents want a different thing, and then you have kids, and it's like, okay, well, what do the kids do? So I feel like I rated it very high because religion is pretty important to me, and so that's something I would like to carry forward in my life.
Yeah.
And so it'd be convenient if my partner is of the same religion.
But if you call it convenient, I feel like then you would rate it like a 3 or a 4.
Or it would make my the end goals that I have in my mind, it would make those a possibility a lot easier without a lot of back and forth or discussion, or without a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
It would help me get to my end goal, like how I see my life in terms of religion.
Yeah. It's surprising that you think religion is a personal thing, because in a lot of ways our parents have had a huge influence on our value system and the way we see the world. Right. And so knowing that, and knowing that you want to pass down your values, can you still say that it's only a personal thing? Like,
I believe in that you can't impose your religion onto people, because I think historically I've been in relationships that the other person is definitely not my religion, not even close. But it was never a problem. I feel like my partner's always respected. My religion requires a lot of maybe time and attention and differences in day-to-day life. When I'm fasting, then we can't have dates at this certain time, and maybe we're eating a lot later or a lot earlier, or if we're hanging out all day, maybe they're mindful to not drink water around me or not eat around me because they know I'm fasting. Yeah. So historically, everyone has been very mindful of this. Or if I need to pray at a certain time, people are very supportive, and they give me my space to do sort of my thing. So that's why I believe even though you're not the same religion as me, it's still my own personal thing, as long as you are not imposing your thing onto me, or I'm not doing vice versa. I think we're all good and correct in our separate corners.
I see.
Yeah.
So based on your situation, a lot of times it feels like a personal thing, because you don't have other people who are doing the same thing as you. So a lot of times it's you doing it for yourself. And I think ideally, maybe it's not a personal thing. Maybe ideally you would be around people who are like-minded and with the same religion, and you can do those things together. And I think especially if your goal is to have a family or to have a really good relationship with your spouse, like you said, it would just be easier if they were on the same page as you.
Yeah, that's true.
So
and you rated it pretty high.
yeah, like 8. I almost went to 8.5. Originally, I was just going to do a 10. And
Wow.
so I was going to do a 10 because, and we'll break this down. I feel like if we don't have the same religious beliefs, then so many things in the relationship gets much harder. Because I'm not saying like being of the same religion means that every single value aligns, but it just makes you on the same,
Like basic.
you're
Okay.
on the same page, you have the same foundation,
Right.
and so there is a common understanding on what goals you want to work towards, how you approach things like forgiveness,
Right.
the community that you have around you. And so that's why I almost gave it a 10. I
Okay.
dropped it down to an 8 because I think that, let's say this person just became religious
Right.
that I'm interested in. I don't think that is like a huge deal breaker.
Okay.
And so I think that's why I dropped it down, because it doesn't mean that they have to be like the same religion since birth or something.
Okay.
Maybe they just want to learn, and they have an interest, and I think as long as the basic faith is there, then not everything else has to be all the way there at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Wait, is it time to reveal what our religious beliefs are?
Yeah, we
Is that-
we can do that.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever talked about that.
No, we haven't. And I want to preface this by saying religion is a hot topic. And so as we move forward in this episode, like this is a space where we're not going to judge each other, and we're going to be good listeners. And so if you're listening to this, we want you to remember that this is a no judgment zone. Okay, and so I am Christian.
And I'm Muslim.
Okay, so at what point does religion become important in a relationship?
Okay, so I want to kind of go back to my first answer about how important it is about the other person
Yeah.
being your religion. I think in every scenario where I said, like, I could kind of do my own thing and it could be personal, it's because the other person was so, like, not that they were a-religious, but they were kind of like, they just didn't care.
Yeah.
I think it's super different if the other person cares, but they care about a different thing.
Oh.
That's like a whole different scenario. And like, I personally could not be with someone that cares, but cares about like a different thing.
Yeah.
I would put them in like that's like a difficult situation. I would not like to be in that situation.
Forbidden fruit?
Yeah, no, I think, if someone is the same religion, or if they're like, they just don't care about religion, like they're open-minded maybe, and they want to learn about any religion, and they're just, that's just not something that they've super thought about or that they super care about, like that's okay to me.
That's wild.
It's like,
That's a hot take.
it is a very hot take, especially because, yeah. But I feel like it's just because, like, in my life at least, like, I've seen a lot especially tends to be men. I don't know why it's always men, but that, like, the adults in my family, like, they're like, they know that they're Muslim. They know that they're born into this, like, but, like, I feel like just because you're born into a religion doesn't give you, like, an upper hand over somebody else who's just not in that environment. Like, if somebody was raised in a family that doesn't talk about religion at all, like, maybe I've met somebody who says, oh, my grandmother is Muslim, and it's like, well, what does that make you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, just because you were in an environment where like religion wasn't talked about and like stuff like maybe you weren't doing Eid or going to the mosque or whatever it is, like that doesn't mean you're a worse person than somebody who was born into it and like who knows it but doesn't appreciate it and isn't curious about it.
Yeah.
So I almost prefer in those situations the person who's like, who doesn't care but who's like curious.
Mm-hmm.
Who like actually cares. And that's why I keep saying that religion is personal, because it's like it has to matter to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Makes
just a
sense.
label. I wouldn't just care that somebody has this label and like, oh yeah, you're this brand and I can like, I'd love to buy this. Like, it's not like that,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, it's personal in the sense that you have a connection to it, and
Yeah, like you actually care about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but then help me understand. There's still a distinction between someone who is curious,
Right?
versus someone who doesn't care at all.
That's true. Okay. I guess, yeah, the don't care at all, like, I guess that could almost be like tiptoeing towards like atheists, like that they're like, but even atheists, I feel like they care, but they care very strongly in the opposition. Like,
Yes.
and I don't want to say opposition, I feel like that's the wrong word, but they have very opposing beliefs that like, and that's still caring. I mean, but by the people that don't care, it's just like, they've just never been in an environment to talk about religion. Like, so many people grow up and they're just like, oh, the world is just the world, and they've never even thought about like what comes after, like why are we here, or like they've just never asked themselves that. And I feel like those are like the curious minds. But if you're like atheist or something, I feel like you've already thought about these things and you've made up a conclusion for yourself.
Yeah.
So I feel like those are like the differences there.
Okay, I get it. So, following your train of thought, so it sounds like at the beginning of a relationship, it's not super important. As long as they're open-minded, they're
Yes.
curious, and maybe they don't take a strong stance,
Yeah.
that doesn't affect how a relationship starts.
Right.
But then, let's say you're progressing in the relationship, things are getting really serious. They're going to meet your parents. Does it matter then?
This is also probably like a hot take. I don't know if you have, or your parents, because then it goes into like your family values and stuff.
Okay.
And like, I feel like, sure, maybe when I was younger, it was like super, super important. And like, maybe to some degree, it still is important. But I feel like at the end of the day, people care. Like, obviously, my parents wouldn't want me to get married and like forget my religion or lose my religion. You know, so I think, but now instead of being so focused on like, oh, you have to find like a Muslim guy and you have to, it's more so like, oh, like find someone that gives you the space to do what you need to do, you know? So it's like less of like a requirement.
Okay. And do
Yeah.
you think your parents feel that way?
That's what they told me. I don't know if they feel something different.
Okay.
Of course, they do come back often and say like, oh, it'd be so much more easier, and it would be easier for you and your family and your future if the person is the same religion, and stuff like that. But yeah, what about you? Do your parents have strong views on this?
To be honest, I don't really know. But
Okay.
that's because I have strong views on it.
Right.
And I think that my parents, they've never felt like a need to say anything.
Right.
And for me, religion is important from the very beginning.
Okay.
Because I think it matters the foot that we start off on.
Uh-huh.
And I want to preface this by saying that this is a really hard topic because people change.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can be married to a person and their faith changes. And it's a very scary thing. We want to acknowledge that that happens. But for me, I think that if I'm not clear about how this person carries himself or lives their life, or even their basic values, then to me, we're not even looking for the same thing at the very beginning.
Okay, that's
And
super fair.
I do want to emphasize that as someone who is a Christian, there are people who are not Christian who look like they have the same values and carry
Right.
themselves well. I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to be a thoughtful and caring person. But then I'm talking specifically about how you want to raise kids
Right.
and like thinking about where your money goes, and then even thinking about spending time at church as opposed to whatever other ways that
Right.
you spend your time outside of work. So like those things, those are going to differentiate someone
Yeah.
who is Christian versus not. And that's why it's important for me from the beginning.
Right. And I do also want to say, like, maybe Ethan is going about it slightly in a better way, just because, like, I feel like I have ran into those issues of, like, in the beginning, I was like, oh, I don't care, you're just a really good person.
Yeah.
But then, like, you know, those differences, like, maybe I'm wanting, like, marriage, and I'm wanting, you know, it's only a real relationship, or, like, it can only turn into a real relationship if it's heading in that direction. Like, I wouldn't just date because I'm bored, or just to date. But oftentimes, like, people who don't have the same beliefs maybe wouldn't have a problem with just doing that.
Yeah.
And so that has, like, blown up in my face a fair amount. And I'm sure I could, like, avoid the heartache and avoid the troubles if I did what you are saying, because, like I said, religion is important to me, and, like, maybe it does show up in different ways. Like you said, not so much in the very early stages of the relationship, but it's like, you know, sort of in the middle of, like, okay, where's this going now?
Yeah.
How does our family get involved? Like, what do we see our kids doing in the future? Like, you know, like, I can't have alcohol in my house. I don't want alcohol in my wedding. Like, is that a deal? Like, those are things I've talked to people about. Like, different little things like that.
Wow.
I feel like could be, yeah, you could save yourself a lot of trouble if they are the same.
I think this points to a really common thing that happens in relationships that we need to talk about. Because when relationships start, there's always, without fail, a honeymoon period.
Yeah.
And in this honeymoon period, everyone is on their best behavior. They're showing the best sides of themselves, but then they're also adjusting to the person so that the other person will like them.
Right.
And so when it comes to even talking about religion and your value system and these things, at the very beginning of a relationship, it's going to seem smooth sailing in general. These things are not going to become an issue because the other person just feels very accommodating.
Right.
They feel like very open-minded to all these things. But I think what you're pointing out, Sania, is that there comes a point when everything becomes very real. And you have to start addressing your views on alcohol. And I think one big thing is sex. Because, like, for me, I don't want to have sex before I'm married. And that is shaped by my understanding of what God made sex for,
right?
But then also, like, how I view women. And I can be dating someone who's not a Christian, and
they'll
like,
try to, like, convince you.
Yeah, and it's not going to
okay.
happen at the beginning.
Right,
But
that's true.
They don't have the same basic under...
True, that's true.
Yeah.
They and maybe in their minds, or, like, they could, like I said, a lot of times, like, there's a lot of, like, Muslims that I've met that are Muslim, but maybe they're not very religious. And I feel like that's, like, another subsect that kind of falls into this.
Yeah.
You know, that they loop you in with, like, the safety net of, like, oh, I'm the same religion, I'm going to have the same beliefs. But then they're like, oh, but it's just this. Like, oh, it's just like a... You know, they'll start convincing you to do all these things that you yourself know are very against your religion.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe things that you yourself are not interested in doing. But because... And sometimes, honestly, if they're the same religion as you, they're kind of in a special place where they could, like... They're more easily able to convince you because they're like, oh, but we're the same.
Yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, yeah, the reason was this, but, like, you know, we're going to be together later anyway, so it doesn't matter. And, like, so there's a lot of, like... Yeah, different people there. So it's not even just finding someone who has the same religion. It's someone who has the same religion and, you know, is as serious about it or actually follows it the way that you follow it to the same extent.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. This is, like, a huge thing that we need to flesh out a little bit because a lot of times religion becomes a checkbox.
Yeah.
On a dating app or
mm-hmm.
just for your own personal self.
Right.
But a lot of times religion, people just use that as a name. And they say that they're one thing, but they're doing another. It doesn't matter if you're like religious or you're not religious. Everyone does that in general.
Right.
We talk big talk, and the actions don't match.
Yeah.
And so, what Sania is bringing up, I love, because someone can say that they're the same religion as you, and that relationship can be just as harmful as a relationship where you don't share the same religious values. And I'm not saying like being in a harmful relationship is what you're destined for.
Right.
But there are like tons of abusive marriages between Christians.
Yeah.
And so does that mean that religion is like a good or bad thing to a deal breaker to have? No.
Yeah.
I think we can't view it as a checkbox.
Yeah.
Like, I think that their religion has to be consistent with their character.
Yeah.
How they treat people, but especially how they act at home. When they're away from other people, are they consistent with how they're acting? Because someone can say that they're religious, they can do all the right things in public, but then at home, they're just a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And so all of those things need to be consistent for there to be a good foundation in this relationship. And I think you did a really good job bringing that up. Hey, I'm starting to stumble over my words. Like, this is a tough topic to talk about.
It is, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Are there any situations in a relationship where religion is not important, and then the other things become more important, do you think?
When religion is not important?
Yeah, so we were just talking about how when you're with your family, your value system, like those are things that you really want to make sure that you guys are good on. But does religion affect the day-to-day? So arguments and
I see.
going on dates, wedding planning.
Yeah.
Does it affect any of those things?
I think totally. I think it does affect dates. So, like, as a Muslim, like, you can only eat halal meat. So, like, being mindful of that. And, like, I know with, like, someone that I was talking to, like, any time that we needed to cook together, like, we would have to, like, drive over to, like, the halal store because I don't want to cook any other meat in my house. Or, like, you said marriage. Like, I think that's kind of, like, religious and then also kind of cultural. Like, what constitutes a marriage in Islam is, like, probably different than what constitutes a marriage in, like, Christianity or, like, any other religion. So, like, the other person has to be willing to, like, play ball and, like, be willing and be interested and actually not even be willing, like, would actually want to go through marriage the way that it's accepted in your religion.
Yeah. I actually think this topic is really interesting because I think you can go through the whole dating phase and maybe even engagement, and religion is almost not a factor at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like like I said, like the dates, the cooking, it's still like sort of peripheral,
Yeah, and I don't think that's a good thing. Because like what I can see happening is someone who's religious, they're dating someone who is not. But on the weekends, they're at church or at mosque or at temple. And then they are donating money to their church or mosque or temple. And then they are volunteering like once a month at a homeless shelter or food pantry. And that is the way that they show love on their neighbors.
Right.
And maybe when they're dating, they don't expect their partner to come along on all those things because they're like, okay, like this is going to be my thing. This is my personal faith, and this is how I want to live my life out. And so if I'm going to do this on a Saturday morning, you can do your own thing. I'll hang out with you later.
Right.
But you don't have that luxury when you're married or when your lives are actually joined. And so if that is your goal, we want you to be very aware that if there are things that you guys do alone, but is important to you and how you live your life. I'm not talking about playing video games or different sports that you like watching or playing. If this is something that is important to you, and maybe the question you can ask yourself is, if you want your kids doing this with you, if it is that important to you, then it should raise some kind of signal for you to think about this more, about your partner is not on the same page with you on this. And it won't really feel like an issue while you're dating, because you still have time alone. And even if you're living together, right, you guys can still do things separately. But when you're married, that just doesn't become an option anymore, because it's you're planning together, you're scheduling things together. And so the advice we're trying to give is, don't let it drag on too long. That like, think about it early. Ask yourself, is this something that you want your kids to
I think you should like kind of like sprinkle in religion like in the early stages of dating.
What does that mean? Like holy water?
I'm dead. Hi. No, I'm kidding. I just mean like, okay, I feel like in my very early relationships, like when I was like a lot younger, like I think I definitely attracted like people that are completely different from me, like religiously, like forget religion, like even just their values were completely different from me, because I didn't like wear my values on my chest, like, you know, like this is what it is, like take it or leave it kind of thing. But I feel like as I continued to get older, I was just like, I would rather they, you know, for example, the halal meat, like I would rather they know that this is what I want. And I know it costs more, but like that's like an expense that like you should be okay with if you want to be with me, or totally fine if you're not, you know. Or like if I say like, oh, I don't drink, you know, like are they encouraging me, or are they like, oh, but why, like da 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 da, like are they going against it? Or like are they like, oh, okay, totally, like we can do that for you, we're gonna always have like energy drinks around, like whatever you need, whatever it is. Or like, you know, if you say you need to like wake up really early in the morning to like pray, or like when I'm fasting I can only eat before sunrise and then after sunset, so like are they being supportive and they're like, you know, helping you and calling you to wake you up to make sure that you don't forget to eat, or whatever it is. So it's good to do like little things, I think, even in the early stages, that are like very small things if you think about it, like making sure that there's like a quick thing that I can grab in the morning before the sun rises to quickly eat, and like having a glass of water like there so that, you know, it's easier for me to do what I need to do. Like that can show you how things could potentially look like down the line, and that could show you how comfortable is this person with my religion, because I'm sharing the things that are important to me. You know, I'm not just hiding and like going to mosque on Friday and like seeing them in the evening, like, or anything like that. Like they're kind of sort of a part of it. I'm not asking you to come and like stand and watch me pray. I'm not like here, let's read the Quran together. Like, no, but I'm still sharing the parts of myself that could impact you, you know?
So you're kind of sticking on your line that even if they're not the same religion, as long as they're not so tied to another value system or lifestyle, it can work.
I mean, like I said, maybe it can't, I'm still single, so maybe it can't work. But I'm saying it would be okay, like even if they are the same religion. Like, sorry, I keep going back to this because for me, personal belief, again, please don't hate me for this, but I view someone who's like born into the religion of Islam and is a Muslim the same, and like they're a bad Muslim, let's say, like they don't do anything, they don't pray, they don't fast, they don't, you know, there's like basic things that you have to do and they don't do those things. I view them the same as someone who's born into a different religion, or who doesn't care about religion, or is not so aware about it, and also doesn't pray or doesn't fast. Because I'm like, why should you get benefit because you were born from a certain family? That has nothing to do with you. Where you're born, like you didn't do anything in this, you know?
Yeah.
But I think what I'm saying for both of these cases, to like, just to, not even to test them, but just to test how your life is going to be, and to make sure that you, if religion is important to you, to make sure you're set up well for like the future. I think that the important thing to do is to share religion early days. You know, like if you are going to church on Sunday, like maybe not like the first week you're dating, but maybe like 2 or 3 weeks in when they're like, oh, how come we never hang out on Sundays? And you can be like, oh, I'm actually at church. Like you're more than welcome to come if you want. You know, like you can totally do that. So that you can see like they can be a part of all aspects of your life. And it's not like you're doing two separate things. Like let's say they really want to hang out with you on a Friday evening and that's like your time to volunteer at a soup kitchen. Like, and they're like, oh, why can't we hang out on Friday? And you could be like, oh, I'm doing this. Like, if you want, you can come.
Yeah.
You know, like not keeping them away from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is tough for me to talk about because I think I approach relationships a little differently. I think there's a lot of value in what you just said. If you are dating someone who has different values than you, it is important to bring them into your life from the very beginning so that it's not foreign to them and they understand where your heart is and what's going on in your life. For me, I wouldn't date them unless I knew we were aligned on those things already. And it's really interesting how you're talking, Sania, because there's a lot of things that you do as a Muslim woman, and these are all important to you. Like we're talking about food and prayer, and I think for me, the doing feels a little less important, and the heart posture matters. Like that is the utmost priority. And so, like as a Christian, I think that I'm looking for someone not who like just goes to church or like serves in all the right ways or donates like all their money. I'm looking for someone who loves God, but then also knows that they are like a broken person and they need to be saved by God. And I feel like when you have when that has shaped your values, then you are more willing to extend forgiveness to another person because you've been forgiven, and then you're more able to love the people in your life because like you understand the love that you were shown, and so then all the other things become easier. But just I think I bring this up to say that I think the heart always matters a lot. And so doing your best to understand the other person's heart and why they're doing the things that they're doing, why they say they believe something is really important. They can do all the right things, but if their heart isn't really in it and they're not doing it for the right reasons, maybe they're just doing this because it's a habit, or they're doing it because they feel like this is the only thing they know, I would challenge that just a little bit. But I think that either way, there are some big implications down the line on your religious beliefs. And so we're kind of getting to that point. So you've been talking about, Sania, about bringing them into your life while you're dating. But there comes a point where your life is like super tied together. Maybe you're not even married yet. But what are the implications at that point? I think it's crazy. Like your religious values shape how you spend and save your money. How you want to raise your kids. How you treat your family. And then if you're willing to, like even your friendships with other people, if this person constantly loses friends and there's like blow up after blow up, it's not just a religion thing anymore. It affects their character. So like with all of these things like down the line that we need to think about, like what do we do about that?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of where everything comes to like a boiling point. Like, go ahead.
Even like one person wanting to baptize their kid, and the other person,
Yeah, no, totally. Like, you have to make these decisions together. And then I feel like, obviously there has to be like discussions about it. And depending on how mature both people are, like, those can either go, well or not well. But at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. Like, even if you and your partner are very good at problem solving, at like expressing yourselves and all of those great things, like for baptism, for example, like a decision has to be made. Like, will this happen or will this not happen? So you can be the best of communicators, but if you can't come to a conclusion that you are both happy with, then like maybe that's not something that you should pursue.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, at that point I think like, right now, like you said, in the early days and the dating and the engagement, like you can just love each other and like be there and enjoy it. And like, of course it helps if they're the same religion, but if they're not, it's okay. But like that is being married, and especially when you bring kids into it, that's like a huge boiling point. And at that point there has to be a decision made, and it's better to talk about what happens down the line when you're in those early stages of like getting closer to each other, because you're like, oh man, like this might go the distance, like let me make sure we're on the same page so that we're not 9 months pregnant like babies do, and it's like, wait, so where do we stand on XYZ number of topics?
Mm-hmm. So does that mean that you should avoid all the pain and address this at the beginning? I think that is one of the big questions that we're trying to figure out.
I think it means that you figure it out. I don't think it needs to be like I know that like some people date and it's like a first date topic. Like they won't even date someone that's not the same religion. I believe because religion is so complicated, like we said, you were talking about measuring like not just actions, but like how their heart is. I don't think you can figure that out on a first date if they're listing out and they're telling you like, oh, I do this and I donate and I go here, and you won't know what their heart is like.
Yeah.
So I think, unfortunately, religion is one of those things that you actually need to give it a little bit of time to understand if this person's values align with yours and if they have like the same virtues and like, the same like deep core like beliefs. But I feel like while you're in the dating phase, before you make any sort of big commitment like an engagement, I think it's important to have very clear conversations about like, hey, what do we do with our kids?
Yeah.
Are we expecting them to go to church every Sunday? Like, are we going to take them like every Sunday?
Yeah.
Are we like going to make them pray 5 times a day? Because nobody wants to do that. It feels like I was a kid. I didn't want to do it. Like now I'm an adult and I'm like, oh, I can see the value in it. But as a kid, like, maybe you have to like encourage them to do it a little bit more. So it's super important when you feel that things are getting serious that you actually have like a very clear, transparent conversation about it.
Yeah.
So it's less of like the small hints of like, oh, like if we're gonna go eat, like maybe let's pick a halal place and it's like, no, like it's this or like nothing. Like this is kind of my deal breaker. Or sorry, not even this is my deal breaker.
Yeah.
And like we shouldn't continue on. Like I love you a lot, but I cannot be with you because of these things.
Yeah, I think that I'm fully on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hard because if you guys have been friends for a while, you don't have to date them and then figure this out and then have this conversation. You can kind of figure it out even before you date. With someone, like let's say you're on the dating app, you meet someone, you can't find this out immediately. Like you make a really good point. But then I'm almost wondering if you can have this conversation before you become official and define the relationship, before your boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah, you totally can.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on your level of comfort and like when in the relationship do you feel like I personally in relationships, I don't feel comfortable to like I said, religion is personal to me. I don't like talking about it, not because I'm like ashamed of it or anything. Like I love my religion, but I just feel like it's like my thing and I don't want to I'm kind of selfish about my religion almost. So like I don't feel comfortable to open up about like certain things like unless we're in that like relationship space. So like I feel like different people will be different levels of comfortable. You know what I mean?
Wow. I never thought about that.
Like some people just won't, like you said in the early stages, like you're just impressing each other. And like, of course, if it's like, date 2 or 3 and like we're not boyfriend girlfriend yet, and they're like, hey, so like if we have kids, like where's like what's gonna happen, I will say my point. But I guess like I'm like less willing to hear out that, like, I don't know.
Yeah, that
that
conversation is probably way too early.
Yeah.
Like before you guys are boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah, because it just puts like extra pressure, and it's just like we don't even know if we like each other that much yet.
Yeah, I guess what I'm proposing is that you use that like talking stage before you're official to figure out what was the word, like their heart.
Okay.
And
yeah,
like why they do what they do. And so it's less question asking and more observing. And hopefully if you decide to get into a relationship, you already know like their heart. Or you at least have, there's like a good enough foundation to start off on. I just think that once you get into a relationship, even if you have these tough conversations, it becomes hard to see things super objectively anymore, because you know, there's all these expectations in relationships. So I think what I'm proposing is before you jump into that, like all the do's aside, like figure out what makes them tick. And are they genuine?
Super true.
And
that's super true.
Okay, so one of our viewers, his name is Ben, shout out to Ben, sent me an article last week.
Okay.
And it's about this Muslim woman who married twice.
Okay.
And
which is allowed, by the way.
Okay.
In our like she got divorced from the first person and then married again.
So she actually got divorced in both marriages.
Okay.
The first marriage was to someone, I forget exactly all the details. The first person was Muslim, and then I don't think the article is super clear on why they divorced. The second person was not Muslim, and at first it was a huge deal breaker for her. She was like, if they're not Muslim, I'm not going to even consider this. But then what happened was he was such a good person that she was like...
Good heart.
Exactly. Yeah. Good heart. And she was like, I see enough that even if he doesn't share my religious beliefs, the way that we can live our lives can look the same.
Okay.
So treating other people with kindness and being generous with money and time.
Yeah. I definitely, we should also know there's lots of like overlaps, I think, also between like all of the religions.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to fall into that of like that thinking of like, oh, they have a good heart. Yeah. And we do things in similar ways.
Right. And I think that's why I'm trying to bring this article up, because what happened was they got married, they had one kid, and the husband didn't want to be involved. He's like, if you have a question about God or religion, go ask your mom.
Yeah.
And the mom would take this kid to mosque, I think, and raise him or her as a Muslim.
Yeah.
And what happened at the very end was the husband said, hey, I don't think this is working out. Like, I don't love you anymore. And that's how it ended. And that is gut-wrenching and earth-shattering. I might have like missed some of the details, but that is like the general idea of what happened. And I think that this is a reality for a lot of people out there who maybe had a bad experience dating someone who was the same religion as you. And I think it's clear in those relationships that you can be the same religion, but your heart posture is different.
Right.
And that's a red flag. But then that has caused you, like that bad experience has caused you to say, well, maybe someone who is a different religion or not religious can just treat me better than the last person. And I think that this article points to some serious red flags too, because even if they are a good person and they are doing things that you could see yourself doing and you can live a life that is together, I think at the very end of the day, I don't want to say religion is important, but your core values and why you do what you do, it shapes how you view marriage and whether or not you're willing to consider divorce. Or like what situations would you consider divorce, and then even what level of commitment you have to each other. And so I feel so bad for that lady because at the end of the day, her husband just was not on the same page about commitment. And it was hard for her to see because she got into that marriage saying this person is a humanist, this person is a good person. But there were values that were just so hidden that they were not on the same page. And she doesn't regret the relationship. She loves her kid and cares for her kid deeply, but I feel bad that this marriage didn't work out. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad story. I did not read the article, so I don't know like all the different details in it.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you just feel bad that it ended, I don't think that that's like the end of the, like, I feel like relationships end, you know? I'd like her other relationship ended and the guy was Muslim. This guy was not Muslim and it ended. I don't think his religion, again, did not read the article, but I don't know if like his religion had anything to do with the reason for why it ended.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to separate religion and the heart. Like, I think right now in this moment, we're calling religion as believing and doing all the right things. But we have talked today that is less important than making sure that their heart is in the right place and they're doing these things like on the same page as you.
Right.
And the thing is, like, relationships end. That is a reality. But does that mean we want our relationships to end? No. And so how do we make sure that we protect ourselves well and guard our hearts well and make sure that this situation doesn't happen to more people?
Like a relationship ending?
Yeah, like how, like if you were in this situation yourself, like what things could you do to make sure that it doesn't end up the same way?
Like, I guess I'm not really like following, because it's like,
okay,
go ahead.
so I think this story is important. I'm less focused on the story now.
Okay.
But the story is important because you can date someone with the same religion and things don't work out.
Right.
And it's because your heart is not in the same place.
Right.
You can date someone who...
with the same heart.
I would hesitate to say the same heart.
Okay.
But someone who doesn't share the same religious beliefs, but you have faith in that relationship because they're a good person. I guess maybe the main takeaway from all of this is to have the tough conversations as much as you can.
Wait, so why did their relationship end? I feel like I'm like completely missing the point of the article.
Because he didn't love her anymore.
Yeah, which happens. People fall out of love.
And that was it. Like,
okay.
I think the religious differences played some kind of factor.
Definitely.
But he just didn't love her anymore.
Okay.
And I think this points to religion, heart, having the tough conversations about your values. And there's like probably no comprehensive list, but this is probably why pre-engagement or premarital counseling is important, just to make sure you're on the same page on these big things. Like in this case,
like divorce, for example.
In this case, yeah, I wonder if they had the conversation about divorce. Like, what are the cases where we feel like it's okay to file for a divorce? And it sounds like they weren't on the same page on that.
Okay.
Right? So, like, religion aside, character side,
Right.
there's
I don't know. Like I'm kind of trying. I do see the logic, but I feel like I'm not like, because I'm just like, there's only so much stuff you can talk about and only so much stuff you can prepare for.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if it happens, it happens. I kind of see what you mean. Like, I guess people have different viewpoints on like divorce, for example. Like culturally, it's very like frowned upon. In certain cultures, religions, it's like made a lot easier. And I think there's like different rules about divorce. Like in Islam, I can speak to that. You're not allowed to just get a divorce. You have to, like, if you want a divorce, you have to say it once, and then you have to say it the following month again to the person. So there's like a rule. You have to say it 3 times for it to be, because like the religion, I don't know, understands that people can say stuff in the heat of the moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so there's like a process to getting said divorce. But I feel like there's not, and like, sure, this guy not being the same religion as her, maybe it was just easier for him and he was just like, you know what, I'm done. And I feel super sorry for this lady, but I feel like there's nothing that they could have done in their dating stage. Like, you know, talking about what is it going to take for you to leave me? Like, because you know how you said people's religious beliefs change during a relationship? People change all the time. You know, like their feelings, their goals in life, their heart changes also. Maybe something super horrible happened to the guy and like now his heart is like heavy and like he's no longer wanting to be a good person. And like he feels like he's dragging her down. So he's like, let me cut her free. Like, we don't know all the things. And I feel like you can't, I feel like there's not like a standard equation that you can follow to be like, oh, if I do this, this, and this, like I will be safe. We will not end up in a divorce.
Yeah.
I do see the value of, you know, you said talking about the big stuff early on, and people's opinions on that could change too.
Yeah.
Like, I think a topic that we didn't touch on, which I don't know, we might cut this out, is like, you know, if you have a child and they are
Disabled.
no, if they're not if they're into their same gender, like if they're homosexual. You know, like that's also like religiously, both of our religions are pretty strict on that, we could say. But like, let's say, like I've talked to people about like, oh, what do we do if that happens? And like, I'm more like, I guess are people's opinions what they're saying now versus what you say when your 8-year-old daughter comes up to you and like actually says that, how you're going to react. So I think there's like only so much you can do. I think the best thing, and like we keep coming back to this because I think it is literally the hardest thing to do, but like the best thing is to just figure out what you want, what you need, what you have to have, and what you like, for example, like the baptism, like certain things that you have to have, and just clearly express them to your partner. Mm-hmm. And that is like the biggest thing that you can do to protect yourself and like safeguard yourself in all these situations.
I think I know what I want to say now.
Okay.
I think that's valid. Like, I would support that as a strategy. Mm-hmm. I think from the story, the point that I want to make is that on one hand, you have religious beliefs / religious practices. On the other hand, you have the heart. And is this person like a good, genuine person? And I actually think that they go hand in hand, and you need to, it's actually both have some very serious implications.
True.
And I think that the strongest foundations in relationships are when you're on the same page with both. Okay. And not saying that your marriage is not going to work out if you don't have one or the other. Mm-hmm. It's going to take more work. But when you're on the same page with both, because what happened in that story is he didn't love her anymore, but religion drove a wedge between them.
Right. Okay.
And so he was a good person, a genuine person, but he was not on the same board on the religious stuff. Like, he did not want to be a part of that. Right. And when you have that kind of gap, like when your partner or spouse is spending time doing things that you don't really understand or are not committed to yourself, it's gonna make things harder. True. And so I stand by what I said at the very beginning of this episode. At least for me, I need to be sure not sure, but I need to know it's an 8 at least, for us to be aligned religiously.
I really like this like constant thing that you talked about this episode, Ethan, about the heart versus the religion.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, not that I don't care about, like I said, I know I put it like a 7 was my rating. And like I did talk a lot this episode about like it's okay to be with someone in a different religion and stuff like that. Because I feel that I've been personally bamboozled a lot by people branded and labeled as like I am Muslim, I have this checkbox.
Yeah.
But I really like that you say it's the heart and the religion both together.
Yeah.
You cannot, it's difficult to have one or the other. So I agree with you. I think it is super important, especially if and like all of this for this whole episode is only important and only is applicable if religion is important to you yourself. Like all the stuff that we talked about.
Yeah.
Because if you're dating and you're one of those people that like doesn't care about religion, like skip this episode. Like maybe we should have said this in the beginning because they don't care themselves.
But they care about the heart stuff.
They do care. They do care about the hard stuff, but like maybe they're not thinking about it as deep. Like we are so invested in it, and we're at an 8 and a 7, and maybe I want to bump up to an 8. I don't know. Like it is so important to us because we see our life fitting a certain way and going a certain way.
Yeah.
And like that's why we want the person that we're with to also be a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for someone who's not religious, it's probably still worth listening because overall, like this topic is about figuring out if the other person is the right person for you.
Right.
Like that person who's not religious, at some point, there's a good chance they'll date someone who is religious. And it's good also to understand from the other point of view.
Okay, that's fair.
And the last point I want to make is that a lot of times you date someone who doesn't have the same religious beliefs or the same value system because in your head, and probably for a good reason, you believe that they can love you better than the last person or your exes. And so you're like, I'm going to give this person a chance. But just for a moment, think about, can someone who is not fundamentally on the same page with you on a lot of the big stuff, that's like, of course it's further down the line, you're not thinking about it. Can that person who's not on the same page love you as well as someone who wants exactly the same things that you want?
Okay.
And that's the rhetorical question I leave to like all of you. And so the person who wants the same things as you, like, it's gonna be tough to find them. There's gonna be people who claim that they want the same things, but their hearts are full of crap. And then there's just gonna be people who are the smooth operators. But you know, I don't want any of us to settle.
That's super true.
Oh my gosh. My heart feels kind of heavy. How does your heart? Oh
Yeah,
my
I'm
gosh.
feeling emotional kind of.
Yeah, me too. Okay, we're going to wrap this up now.
With a light.
This is very light, and it's also very different. We're giving you guys winter style tips. So winter is coming. Shout out to all the Game of Thrones fans. I have 3 pieces that I've picked out for guys that I recommend for the winter. Sania has 3 for the girls. And we're gonna
go through them quickly.
Yeah, and say why recommend them, where you can get it. Okay, you want to start us off?
Yes. So I was very excited to do this because I was doing a lot of my winter shopping recently. So I was just like, these are the things that everybody needs to have.
Okay.
First thing, a good pair of tall boots with kitten heels.
Okay.
These brown ones, Ethan, I do have them. I just didn't wear them today, but you will see me in them on Monday.
Okay.
I think they're so stylish. You need like a cute pair of boots for the winter, like to wear with like tights, to wear on top of like leggings on top of skinny jeans, I think. And they're like a fashion statement. Like the boots are the outfit. You don't need to try much, you don't need to try hard with anything else. So I think that's my first thing. Second thing is a like a puffer vest. I feel like a good jacket And like I feel like puffers are like cute because you can wear them on a hike, but you can also wear them into the office. Wearing them to dinner is like, you can potentially wear it to dinner depending on what you wear for the rest of your outfit.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a puffer vest is great. I think very versatile, like very warm, which you need for winter. And then, okay, I have kind of 4.
Okay, that's good.
The next thing was socks. I feel like cute scrunchy socks are like, you know, because like it's winter, you're wearing your boots, you might as well wear the longer socks and like be warm. And then the actual 4th thing is a scarf. I've been wanting to buy this chunky scarf for like literally 3 years, and I have not bought it yet. Maybe this winter will finally be the time. I feel like scarf, similar to the boots, is like a big statement piece. And are you making faces?
Sorry. I can't keep a straight face.
Not even saying anything funny. And like it kind of completes the whole look, and again keeps you warm. So these are my things.
Why are your things so expensive? That's why I'm making that face.
These are things that are in my personal shopping cart.
Oh my gosh.
But any scarf, sorry, these were just example things. But like any scarf goes. Any chunky scarf that you can just be cozy in. Any pair of boots from wherever. I feel like when you're wearing heels, this is just like a personal tip that my mom told me. You should spend a lot of money on your heels. If you wear cheaper heels, they're going to hurt your feet more. But it's just, yeah.
Okay, so you're okay with them finding cheaper alternatives?
Yes.
Because those things are, besides the socks.
Yeah. Yes, find whatever alternative suits you.
I don't know how you can afford those things on this podcast income.
I have no savings, everyone. Now everyone knows my financial status. Like, don't hate me. But yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking very similarly as you.
Okay,
so
cool.
First, same, boots. Well, you need good pair of boots in the winter. It's going to be raining, it's going to be snowing. You need something that's durable. You don't want to wear sneakers that can get water inside. So I picked a pair of Chelsea boots.
Yeah.
Similar color to you. This can just match with anything. They make you stand a little taller. These Chelsea boots I really like because they're easy to get on and off, and they're just a very classic look. So you can dress them up, you can dress them down. So dress them up, wear them to the office, wear with like more formal clothes, but then you can also wear this with a hoodie, and it just looks like an elevated streetwear kind of look, and you can pull that off too. So very versatile. My first one. Second one is a wool coat. So you went for a jacket too. I really like a wool coat. I like this color. It's because I'm from New York. Yeah. But I think this beige color matches with a lot of things. It also, like, dark colors can be good because they kind of hide your figure. But then I think this
easier
one,
to keep clean.
Yeah, this one I still like.
It's more of a fashion, like...
Yeah, like
thing.
I would lean to this. Maybe just something that is a little lighter. Maybe like a gray. Just not... I think...
Not the black, yeah.
It just makes you stand out a little more. And I think all guys should have this. I will say that if your body is a little more wide, or like you're more short and stocky, instead of getting a jacket like this that is so long, maybe look for one that is... that has a little less length, and that will probably fit your body a little better. Okay, and then the last one is a cardigan. So I was thinking about like a sweater for the winter, and I think cardigans are just nice because they feel very cozy, very huggable, and they're pretty casual, not doing too much. But I like something like this with just a little like more details on the buttons, something that is a little thicker.
Right.
And that's my last one. So
have fun shopping.
yeah. And it doesn't have to be super expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Of course, there's lots more to talk about. Let us know what you think, as always, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.